bio, she starts it off, she's half Texan, half Cajun, 100% inspiration, which just that line alone gives you every feel that you ever need to know about Knoxy. But she has been a working artist for the last 17 years. She has a dedication to a job well done. She's a commercial director and photographer, passionate about bringing creative concepts to life. The work she does is a community effort. Like, it takes more than one individual. So she's always sure to bring in marginalized groups, underserved groups, and she recognizes that only 8% of the jobs in her world are awarded to women. So she, as well as her crew, is working to up that percentage as they work. In her spare time, she rides horses. She loves traveling the world and spending time with loved ones, preferably on the side of a mountain. But here to share her thoughts on the intersection of creativity and perspective, let's welcome Knoxy Knox.
Public speaking, as my friend Peter would say, if it's scary and exciting, you should do it. So, woo, let's go. It's a little different than when I was practicing with my spoon microphone in my kitchen yesterday. But, so I chose the colors because it's early in the morning, and I want to wake us all up a little bit. But thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time to join me and listen to my thoughts on perspective and why I believe that creativity is your superpower. Bloop. Who is she? When Ben said his pronouns earlier, I was like, oh, my pronouns are queen and goddess. So just write that down. But yes, Knoxy Knox. I've had the privilege of living in Austin for 23 years. Went to the University of Texas, and then just decided that I loved the creative community so much here when I started my first business in 2007 that this was the place for me. So I'm going to show you guys a little bit of my work so you can get an idea of what we've been up to all this time. Specializing in food, beverage, product and lifestyle, stills, motion, and video. I'm so grateful to Austin because I really cut my teeth here. Working with local brands forever ago at their inception, like Tito's, prepared me to shoot national ad campaigns for brands like Knob Creek Whiskey. It's pretty cool. And when I first started out my business, it was really with nothing more than a wish and a prayer, because what we're gonna talk about today are some of the mindsets that I had to adopt in order to literally go from living in my car and selling plasma for $20 a pop, having every side job you can possibly imagine, to growing this career into something that had a tremendous amount of longevity and, seen me through a recession, has seen me through a pandemic, is currently seeing me through whatever the hell this is right now. So I need this reminder, hopefully just as much as everyone else. But yeah, I really had to adapt a very strong mindset, and I'm so glad I did, because when I was pretty much homeless living in my vehicle, by the way, I could have moved back with my family at any time, but I was just like, I have a dream, Delulu. I was just in my delusion, focused on my dream. But I never could have dreamt how this would have turned out. This is a lot of lifestyle imagery from a current client. And now, I started working for local brands in Austin, and I still love doing that, but I get to travel all over the world and shoot for these amazing clients and with incredible teams. And it's because of the mindset and perspective that I cling to constantly. So, as Ben mentioned, I'm a horse girl. Anytime I can cram a horse or a Western something into a shoot, I'm always happy to do that. As we mentioned, the pandemic in 2020 hit. Pretty much all of production shut down that year. So I decided, God forbid I just chill for a while. I wanted to make the most of my time. So I created an online course. I had been mentoring for years at this point, always trying to help empower people to experience a creative career that was supportive, of them and their lifestyle. So I created an online course called Set for Success, which is essentially the building blocks of business creation. So anyone who wants to can start a business, whether you're a creative entrepreneur or not. in the modules, I interview a lawyer, an accountant, an insurance agent, a marketing expert, and an emotional intelligence expert in regards to networking. And then I do modules all about boundaries and red flags and when to walk away and, client relationships and all of that. But because I had been on my own, personal development journey, I knew that people needed to have something a little more impactful. Aside from simply, the technical structure of starting a business, they needed to have some empowerment that could help them really create some longevity and success. So thank you for making eye contact and smiling with me. That's like so supportive. I love that. This is scary if you can't tell. So anyway, just to further, this journey that I was on, I ended up getting a certification in neurolinguistic programming, which is essentially the science behind what the power that our brains and our mindsets are capable of. So more on that later, but essentially the prime directive of our mind is to keep us safe, which a lot of times can keep us stuck in old patterns if we aren't able to identify them and move forward out of that. So I'm really going to gloss over a lot of these concepts. It's a 10,000 mile view of a lot of things. If you want to talk about any of it more afterwards, feel free to reach out. But one of the most powerful mindsets that I did, and perspectives that I did cling to, was the fact that life is always happening for me, not to me. You can imagine the amount of rejection that we have to endure as creative entrepreneurs in this space, So it's a lot of roller coasters. The highs can be very high, the lows can be very lows. But if I'm always believing that life is happening for me and not to me, it keeps me out of victim consciousness and in creator consciousness, right? Which is what I needed about 16 months ago when I had a near-death experience when one day I was riding my horse. It's not his fault, by the way, it's my fault. I was cowgirling a little too hard. He's a good boy. But I ended up being thrown from my horse. I landed on my head, resulting in a traumatic brain injury. My chin broke my sternum, and you can see that my arm was going the wrong way. But because I have this mindset so firmly embedded, in my perspective, I knew that life was happening for me, not to me. The moment I could flip over on my back and wiggle my fingers and toes, I was like, thank God that it could have been so much worse. Now, the healing continues to this day. The traumatic brain injury and post-concussion syndrome, the woman you see before you today, I couldn't barely string together sentences. I couldn't remember words back then. Protect your brains at all costs, by the way. Helmets, always. My helmet saved my life that day. But I knew that I wasn't going to take that lying down. I spent hours in a hyperbaric chamber doing red light. I sought every treatment I possibly could because in the darkest days of my healing, when I literally couldn't feel an ounce of joy or happiness or anything, which for me felt very alien because I am a positive person by nature, I knew I was going to find a way out of it, okay? Because I believe that life is happening for you, not to you, to me. Now, a lot of people talking about that victim consciousness can consider failure a dirty word, right? A lot of people would consider that horseback riding accident a massive failure on the part of someone who knows better, I have always seen failure as something that is nothing more than a learning opportunity. It's an educational opportunity for us to learn and grow from in the future. I'm certainly not going to repeat the same mistakes that I made that day. And I think I'm better for it because, again, back to our minds and our mindsets. Our minds are always being programmed. A lot of that has to do with our family systems, our community, our society, where we live. All of that input is constantly coming to us, and our brain is like filtering through it at all times. So what I want to know is, what are you inputting into your mind? What are you listening to? This little picture of the guy, stressed out on his phone. Like, are you doom scrolling? Are you plugged into the 24-hour news cycle? What's going on there? An old therapist of mine had this postcard tacked up to the wall across from the chair where I would sit every session, and it said in a very cheery font, "Thoughts become things, pick good ones." And I would just kind of be like, okay, back then. But now, knowing what I know with all my training, it became very clear to me that thoughts, when applied over time, become your beliefs, which applied over time become your behaviors, which applied over time does become your identity, right? We all make mistakes, we all mess up. You're not what you've done, but you kind of become what you continually do. So again, what are you inputting? What your input is essentially what becomes your output, and where your attention goes, energy flows, as they say. That includes the way you speak about yourself. So how many of us in this room use self-deprecating humor? I mean, yeah, I still have to catch myself from doing that, because the way you speak about yourself is training your mind to believe just that, okay? If you're saying, oh, I'm such a failure, oh, I'm so dumb, silly me, your mind is going to continue to look for evidence to prove you right, whatever it is that you're proclaiming. Everything you say after I am is creation. Everything. Think about how often we just say things, oh, I'm exhausted. Your brain's going to be like, you're exhausted. I'm going to continue to make sure that you're exhausted, okay? Instead of I feel exhausted. When the moment you say I feel something instead of I am something, you take the sting out of it, because that's a temporary issue that's going to pass. And yeah, people really cling to affirmations because they end up being like a placebo effect in your body, mind, and spirit that can have, studies show that placebo effect can be just as effective as some medications and treatments, if you really fully buy into the belief that what you're doing is effective. So I read this book a long while back before I even had my training, called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, which when I read that title, I was just like, ugh, brutal, that's so harsh. But I love that Dr. Joe Dispenza really goes straight to the point here. And it's all about neuroscience and neuroplasticity, and it's this empowering concept that we actually have the power to rewire our brains. So here you see, this is what a neural pathway looks like. This is what our brains essentially consist of. Now, I like to use this metaphor of the skis, an embedded belief, potentially a limiting belief, a negative narrative, an inner critic voice, is like a ski slope that you have gone over many, many times, right? It's a deeply embedded groove in that snow. We have the power with focused effort and attention to create a new neural pathway, like this little white spot here is when that old neural pathway breaks apart and then starts a new one, a new belief. So an example of a limiting belief that I feel like is a little relevant is, it's so hard to make money in this economy, right? A lot of people, you keep hearing that messaging a lot right now. The idea is, sure, that's an option. That's a choice you can make, to believe that and keep skiing over that trail. Or you can replace it with a preferred belief like, lucrative opportunities present themselves to me all the time. That is essentially like when you ski off into the powder, the fresh powder for the first time, okay? That trail can easily be covered up by new snow. So it's your job, using your awareness, to start making sure that you're catching yourself from going on the deeply embedded path and start going over that new path as often as possible, strengthening that mind muscle and strengthening that belief system over time. All of us here in this room identify as creatives, right? Because everyone, no matter what you do for a living, has the potential to be a creative. So I want to encourage us all to use our beautiful imaginations to choose the preferable perspective, the more positive perspective and path, and to continue to strengthen those grooves over time. It's literally physically happening in your brain, y'all. So it's pretty magnificent. You can YouTube that if you want to see it happening in real time, or you can read that book. So just to continue the thought that, we are able to be, what's the word? Brain injury. So sometimes I forget a word, but that's okay. I love talking about this study out of Japan, a scientist named Dr. Masaru Emoto. Have y'all heard of this water study? I love this story so much. So he would take samples of water and then tape a word or a concept to the bottom of the water, allow the water to experience that intention, and then he would put the molecules under a microscope and see what the effect was. Look how beautiful the results of thank you, wisdom, truth, eternal, angels, and I love you and peace. Look how beautiful that is. I'm simply applying that intention to the water. And then look how destructive and chaotic and sickly the negative words appear. My favorite example of this, though, is at the bottom right. The two polluted water samples are exactly the same samples. The one on the left was before a prayerful intention was applied. The one on the right is the result after the prayerful intention was applied. Same exact sample of water. So this is proof that the molecular structure of water is literally physically, cellularly affected by our consciousness, our intention, and our sounds, including our words. So how is this relevant here, you guys? We're 70% water. So if it's going to apply to a glass of water, that's easily going to apply to us as well. I think that's incredibly empowering. Does anyone resonate with that? It's badass, right? So what do we do now? Now that we have a little bit of inspiration and knowing that you have the power, if you change your mind, that you can change your life. So come up with an idea of something that it is that you want to achieve. If you're an artist, if it's an art project that you want to create, whatever that may be, and get a clear picture of that final product and live in the end. Envision the final outcome, and then you can reverse engineer the action steps that you need to take to get there. So what's important during this process is to remember until it's truly come to fruition, I want you to protect your dreams at all costs. I want you to keep that shit to yourself. You get excited about something and you want to tell everyone about it. It's kind of like when a couple is expecting a baby and then they share the baby names a little too early. Some auntie somewhere is going to know some middle school bully who had that same name, and it's going to ruin the dream for everybody. Well, guess what? They can't say that once the baby's out in the world and already named that name that you love. So keep it to yourself. A lot of times, well-meaning people can project, their limiting beliefs onto you and can sully your relationship with that dream and that idea that you have. So just protect it, like it's a dream or an idea in infancy. Protect it like you would a little baby, and then nurture it all along the way. It's important also to remember that we are the sum of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. Who is in your life? Who are you taking advice from? You should listen to absolutely 0 advice from people who don't have the life that you want to live, okay? If they haven't already achieved what you want to achieve, if they haven't been through what you've been through, they can't talk about it. They have no idea what you're going through. So surround yourself with people that are headed in the same direction, and really just like, it's the same thing as the water, okay? When we're together and we are all having forward momentum, it's so inspiring. Think about when you spend time with a friend who's doing some shit, you're like, like it's inspiring, it lights you up, and then you want to go off and do that. Make that the focus of your friendship group, and then keep the rest to yourself. So how do we do this? Okay, I want to give y'all some action steps, because a lot of times with creatives, we can get lost in the ideas, right? I want to ground us a little bit here. So I always have my coaching clients set some goals for yourself, because you have to have a target to aim at, otherwise you're just shooting in the dark. An airplane that is set 1 degree off course will eventually end up 600 miles from its intended destination. That's pretty far off, okay? So we want to create some goals for ourselves in all areas of life that I have everyone, because you don't want to just strengthen one side. You want to do your career, you want to do your finances, you want to do your health, spirituality, if you have a faith, family, all of that. Set goals for yourself in all areas of life and make them smart. Y'all know about SMART goals? This is not new. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. If you want to make $1 million, but you have $1,000 in your bank account, Let's give ourselves some lily pads that we can jump on to get to that million, okay? Let's work on $2,000. Let's just double it. Then we'll get to 4,000, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Set yourself up to win. Give yourself little wins along the way, even though we're no longer afraid of failure, right? Even if we're failing, we're still failing up. You know, people in our government do it all the time. So why not take a little note from them? Fail all the way up. So once you have your action steps and you have your goals, I love this book, Atomic Habits by James Clear, and I'm going to save you the effort of reading it because it just talks about how you want to make it as easy as possible for yourself to create these new habits in your life. And this is a little bit of a naughty story, but you know, back in my drugs and rock and roll days, I was so good at smoking cigarettes, okay? I loved smoking. Had a cute little case, vintage case and everything. And when I was 27 years old, which was 13 years ago now, I went to South by Southwest, got the South by crud, and I was sick for about 10 days afterwards. And that was probably like the longest I had ever gone without smoking. So I thought, I'm not really feeling smoking anymore. Maybe no pressure, I'll just see how long I can go without smoking. But I realized, remember, our choices can go either way, that I had created a habit and attached smoking to so many things that I did on a daily basis, like my morning coffee, when I was driving and listening to music, after a big meal. You're shaking your head like, et cetera, et cetera. So when I wasn't smoking anymore, I was like, well, I have this void space here, so I'm going to, instead of reaching for a cigarette, I reached for my flip phone, RIP, flip phones, and I would just text someone quickly why I loved them, okay? Filling that space where I used to do something that was harmful to myself, I was actually now nurturing a loving connection. Or I would call them and have a cigarette-length conversation and then just move on about my day. And over time, I completely replaced the habit. I didn't even think about the cigarettes anymore. But turns out I had strengthened all of these amazing relationships in my life. So whether it's making your bed in the morning and attaching a new habit to that, you want to exercise and go to the gym, putting your workout clothes out in the morning and after you brush your teeth, start attaching new positive habits to things that you're doing already, and you will be amazed at how quickly your life can change for the better. It's important to remember, because I know, we're going to set these goals, and if you're too busy looking at the huge picture, it can be overwhelming, okay? We have so much evidence in our lives that this is the way things are, so why would it ever change? That's the most harmful mindset anyone can ever have. This is the way things are. Think about the people in your life who have that mindset. Well, this is the way it's always been. It's the way it's going to be. Do you want to live that life? Or do you want to live a life with these beautiful creative minds, knowing that literally we have the infinite potential to create anything we want in our lives if we're simply willing to be consistent and do what it takes to get there? What we see today in our lives is simply a result of everything we've done in the past. So, if you make positive changes in your life today, a year from now, it is inevitable that you will see evidence of all of those things unraveling from the past and working towards the goals that you have set for yourself in the future. Begin by building trust. Begin building trust by keeping your word to yourself, okay? Once you've established trust with yourself, and you know that no matter what, you are going to show up for yourself, it's a lot easier to trust other people. Because if something goes down, you'll get out of there, okay? If something goes down, with a client, you know that you can have a boundary and move away from that situation because you trust yourself to do the right thing. Lastly, this is my attempt at mid-journey image creation. I really want to thank you all again for being here, and I want to encourage you all so much to please continue to use your perspective and your creativity, because this is what the world looks like without artists and without creatives in general, no matter what your creativity looks like. Only you have your exact life experience. So only you can talk about what it is that you've been through, and only you can help someone who is on a similar path. okay? We need your voice. We need your music. We need your art. We need your inventions. We need your ideas and your messages of hope. Now more than ever. Otherwise, this is what we're left with. So remember, a little quote from Dr. Wayne Dyer: when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Thank you so much for being here. Please connect with me. That was so fun! I know I said a lot of things very quickly, and I could talk about this for hours because it's changed my life. So if you want to talk about anything or if you need any encouragement, do not hesitate to reach out. I'm not just saying that, I mean that. If you need a word of encouragement, you know where to find me.
Instead of a cigarette.
Right?
This should be the universal sign for I need something positive.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. All right, so